One of the largest barriers to investing in real estate, especially for newer investors, is coming up with the down payment for each of your properties. Many lenders require that you put a minimum of 20% down to avoid things like private mortgage insurance or PMI. Today, we're going to discuss overcoming this challenge so that you can build a solid portfolio of income-producing properties. Hey, House Stackers, welcome to episode number 7 of the Stacking Houses podcast, where we help working professionals create a solid plan B, a side hustle of passive streams of income through real estate investing. I'm your host, Damon Santamaria, and my goal for each show is to provide you with some practical and inspiring information so that you can create a solid financial plan for yourself. So to help you on your journey, I want to give you a free tool called the Personal Financial Statement, which will help you highlight your own assets and liabilities, much like a company would. And I use this on a quarterly basis, which helps me, number one, better understand my own financial position and allows me to make goals where I want to be in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. Additionally, the Personal Financial Statement allows me to see myself how banks and lenders see me. So this can be an eye-opening experience if you haven't done so yet. So you can pick this up simply by going to stackinghouses.com/financial statement. And while you're there, you can check out our free training on where we're finding great deals in today's landscape. And you can also check out my blog and a bunch of other cool stuff as well. So with that, let's jump in. So before I created a multi-million-dollar business, there were tens of thousands of tiny little steps that I had to take each and every day to ensure that directionally I was always headed towards my goal of financial freedom. There are those daily sacrifices that I needed to make because every little bit adds up, like foregoing Starbucks. And for me, my financial life is just one extremely long spreadsheet of debits and credits. And I know it's really cold and impassive to view the world like this, but it's absolutely true. And I think if your goal is to invest in real estate, you're going to need a small nest egg to get you started. And so looking back over, the last 15 years, I was in sales, before I went full-time in real estate. And in the beginning, my wife and I would save 15% of our W-2 income, as well as any commission I would make from the sales that I was in. And once we saved up 25% for a down payment, we would go shopping for a new rental property. And after buying that rental, we would kind of go broke until we saved up for the next house. And we would also use the extra cash flow from those beginning properties to then add to our savings account, which we can then go buy more rental properties, right? So before long, we were snowballing enough money to begin acquiring 4 properties a year. And this is how we began to house stack. So this process takes commitment and dedication, but it's critical to your long-term success. So, now this process that I just described is how traditional financing works. You save up, for that 20 or 25% down payment, you put it down, you get a conventional loan, and you can acquire properties that way. And that's how I acquired probably my first 20 properties. But this may not be the path for everyone. And there are some other programs that you may qualify which require much less of a down payment. And these include FHA and VA loans. So let's review each. So FHA stands for Federal Housing Administration, and these loans are backed by the U.S. government and designed to help those borrowers with lower credit scores and less financial means qualify for a loan. So typically you can qualify with as little as 3.5% down payment. However, there is something that's called mortgage insurance premium, or MIP, which is required since you're putting less than 20% down. But FHA does not allow investors typically to use these types of loans for rental properties. However, there is kind of a way around this, a loophole. And let's say you go and buy a duplex or a fourplex, or triplex property. You can live in one side of this property, qualifying for an FHA loan, and rent all the other units out. And this is a great house hacking tip. So another program that I just mentioned is the VA loans, and this stands for Veterans Affairs. And these are available for military service and veterans. And typically, there's no down payment required or mortgage insurance. However, there is a mandatory VA funding fee that's required based on the down payment. So similar to FHA loans, VA loans are not available to investors. However, if you kind of use the loophole that I just mentioned in, acquiring a 4-unit property, you can live in one side as your primary residence and you can rent out the other units. So one disclaimer, I am not a lender and sometimes these rules can change. So please check with a lending expert specific to your own situation. But, the idea here is to really think creatively on how you can acquire your first or your next property. And so I just mentioned the term house hacking a few times, and perhaps you've heard of it. For those of you that are not familiar, house hacking is the process of buying a property which you live in, and then you rent out a portion to someone else in order to subsidize your own housing expense. And when done correctly, you can not only live in the property for free, but you can actually make a decent return to cover all of the taxes, insurance, maintenance, and of course the mortgage on the property. And the best properties to house hack are duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. You can still use a single family home and rent out individual rooms in your house, but it all kind of depends on your comfort level and your family situation as well. So I have heard of many folks doing this house hacking trick to qualify for a great loan, and then after a period of time, they move out while keeping that original property and financing in place, only to repeat this process over and over again. And again, I'm not a lender, so I'm not sure of all of the rules surrounding this process specific to FHA and VA loans, so please check with an expert before doing this. But getting back to the main topic here of saving for your first deal. And the question is where do you save? Do you have a savings account? Here's my recommendation. Create a separate savings account where you can begin to funnel money for the direct purpose of your first deal. And this should be separate from your personal savings account and certainly separate from your emergency savings fund as well. And I want you to think of this as your new business account where you can direct any additional money from various sources. And the faster you have a down payment and closing costs, the faster you can buy your first deal. You may even elect to have an automatic payroll deduction of a certain percentage, let's say 10%, routed to this account each month. Additionally, there are other ways to fast track the balance of this account, and I want you to, again, think really creatively. And I'm talking about maybe working overtime, think about your bonus checks if you're in sales and you receive commissions, and then even outside of work, what else can you do? Maybe it's a garage sale, maybe it's Ubering on the weekends, maybe it's even selling those collectible items that you have. I know for me, I actually have thousands and thousands of dollars of my original G.I. Joes from the early 80s. And I actually saved all of the boxes that they came in for all the tanks and the bomber planes and the bases and, everything. And I literally have thousands of dollars worth of these GI Joes, and I would hate to part with them. So I had to think even more creatively, because my wife told me, she said, "Why don't you just sell all your GI Joes?" And I said, "Not a chance in hell." So, but anyway, I digress. So the account balance will grow in direct proportion to how bad you want to invest in real estate. And so, again, get really creative here. But maybe you have enough money already sitting in savings, and that's great. You may be able to fund your first or your second deal, but you're still going to need more money to find those next deals after your first couple. So again, just kind of keeping with the theme of thinking creative here, you may have, there may be some not as obvious sources for funding your next deal, and this may include your 401k, and many employers will actually allow you to take a loan from your 401k. You'll need to check with your HR department to see if this is an option, but that's certainly one path to the down payment. Another is if you have an IRA, and for me, I had a few old 401ks sitting that I had moved to an IRA from previous employers, and I took those funds and I opened what's called a self-directed IRA, where I was able to buy more real estate. And currently, I have many properties sitting in my self-directed IRA, earning a tremendous amount of cash flow for my retirement. And this has been one of the best moves that I could have made to help expand my portfolio. Additionally, you may own your own house, and I don't know if you've ever thought about a home equity loan or doing even a cash out refinance. And maybe you have considerable amount of what I call dead equity sitting in your primary house or in another, maybe a vacation rental or some other property that you have, but that equity is not returning, is not earning any return. And if you look, globally, I guess maybe not globally, but across the U.S., Americans have roughly $5 trillion with a T, trillion dollars sitting in equity in their houses, not earning any money at all, zero return. So think of this example. Imagine, if you're a CEO of a company and you ask your chief financial officer, how much cash do we have sitting on the books? And the CFO replies, "Well, Mr. CEO, we have $5 trillion sitting on the books." And the CEO, says, "Well, how much return are we getting on this $5 trillion? And the CFO kind of looks back and he says, "Well, sir, we're actually not getting any return. We're getting zero." That CFO would be fired on the spot, right? So I want you to, again, think creatively, and why not pull that cash out, refinance at historic low rates, and go buy a property? For me, I've done this 6 times, each time buying more and more real estate that provides a 10% cash on cash return versus, saving 3% in interest. So there's a 7% arbitrage between, the 10% and the 3%. So I know for many people, this is a stumbling block, and they feel more comfortable living in a house that's completely paid off. To which I say, that's an emotional decision. It's not a smart financial decision. And I'm a big believer in running the numbers and letting the numbers guide your decision making. So right now, I'm going to play an excerpt from our real estate investing course called Stacking Houses Academy. This is just one, learning lesson that we take our students through on how to reposition your assets to produce greater cash flow and help expand your portfolio. So I'm going to play that right now. So we're going to discuss an example with specific numbers, so feel free to rewind this. And many people may say that it may be risky to refinance your house and pull the equity out, but I'm going to show you why it's actually a very smart move. In this example, let's say you bought your primary house several years ago and you paid $350,000. You put 20% down, which is $70,000, and the interest rate is 4.5%, and you have a 15-year term. Over the next few years, you pay down the principal balance and the house appreciates at 3% a year, which is conservative. Now here's what the numbers look like today. The current home's value is now $400,000. Equity in your home is $180,000, which is made up of your original $70,000 down payment, plus your $50,000 in appreciation, plus $60,000 in principal pay down. Your principal and interest payment is $2,142, which I consider to be negative cash flow because it's money that's coming out of your pocket versus your tenants. Now let's take a look at how a cash out refi can affect your monthly cash flow. We're going to keep the 20% of equity in the house, which is the current rule for conventional and FHA financing, which is $80,000 in this example. We're going to use the remaining proceeds of $100,000 as the down payment on a fourplex. Here's another trick to improve cash flow. We're going to change the term from 15 years to 30 years on our primary mortgage. Again, we're only concerned with increasing our monthly cash flow. Let's run the numbers again. The current home value is $400,000. Your equity is $80,000. Your principal and interest payment is $1,621, which is negative cash flow over 30 years. For the new fourplex, the value is $400,000. The equity in that fourplex is the $100,000 down payment. The principal and interest is $1,520, and this is paid by our tenants. And the positive cash flow from operations is $800 a month, which is equal to $200 per month per unit for each one of the 4 units. The net cash flow is $2,142, which is the old payment minus the $1,621 new payment plus the $800 in new cash flow. This equates to $1,321 in net new cash flow just by doing this refinance. Did you notice that I did not include the principal and interest from the fourplex in this example? Why? Because the tenants are paying this and giving you $800 more than your expenses. So I think you can see now how repositioning your assets can create greater cash flow. Please note that I'm using round numbers and there's going to be things like closing costs and changes in interest rates which will affect the actual numbers, but I think you get the point. The first 3 times I did this, I only had to pay a few $100s in fees because the banks were so hungry for the business. As I mentioned before, this one strategy is responsible for 6 new properties that my wife and I have purchased over the years. So again, this was an excerpt from one of the many learning segments of the Stacking Houses Academy that Jim and I teach inside the course. If you want to learn more about how we're helping other house stackers, check us out online. But in closing here, don't let the down payment become the reason why you don't get started in real estate. It does take dedication and perhaps a bit of sacrificing, but in the end, it's all worth it. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, our goal is to provide you with incredible value. So for today's episode, I want to give you the free tool called the Personal Financial Statement, which will help you highlight your own assets and liabilities. So you can pick this up simply by going to stackinghouses.com/financial statement. And while you're there, you can check out our free training on where we're finding great deals in today's landscape. So until next time, this is Damon with stackinghouses.com, and happy investing.